During this presentation, we are going to unpack a typical long-term investment strategy. Note that different strategies for this type of investment do exist and are not necessarily more or less appropriate. This presentation merely refers to the most common approach to long-term investment strategies. Your fund trustees are required to draft a document called an investment policy statement. This document includes a strategy, investment objective, a target, and details the portfolios which members have access to. The investment policy is likely to contain a statement along these lines. The primary investment objective of the fund is to preserve members' capital whilst providing sustainable real growth over the long term. The current investment strategy provides for trustee choice only, targeting CPI plus 7%. Now let's unpack some of these terms. The investment objective. This is what your trustees are trying to achieve with the investment. In the above example, the objective is to achieve investment growth without losing too much of what you have put into the investment, the capital. This means balancing the amount of risk you are willing to take with how much you want your money to grow. The basic investment rule here is low risk equals a low return. High risk equals a high return. Now let's look at inflation, or CPI. Money loses value over time. Last year, a loaf of bread cost you 15 Rand 50. This year, the same loaf of bread might cost you 17 Rand 50. This difference in what you are paying for the same product is because of inflation. So if the inflation rate is 5% and your investment grows by 4%, has your investment really grown? No, it hasn't. Your money has lost value by more than what your investment has grown. So this is why your trustees need to target an investment return higher than the inflation rate, or CPI. Let's look at your investment again. If the inflation rate is 5% and your investment grows by 6%, your investment has grown by 1% in real terms. You need an investment that will grow your money at a higher rate than inflation. Now you might ask, why the long term? Your retirement investment horizon, this is how long you will be invested before and after your retirement, is undeniably a long-term investment plan. Before retirement, you will need to save from now until you retire, likely at age 65. Then your retirement does not mean the end of this investment horizon. You need to stay invested to make sure you can draw a pension or an income from your retirement savings for the rest of your life. The investment rules that apply here are, for short-term investments, you need to limit risk or the chances of a negative return or growth on your investment. This is because there isn't time for you to earn losses back. Also, you don't have to worry too much about inflation because it's just for a short time. Therefore, you can consider a low risk for low return investment strategy. For long-term investments, you absolutely need a return higher than inflation. But to get that, you need to take a certain amount of risk. If you stay invested in the market, you have the capacity and time to ride out the ups and downs of a high-risk investment to get a positive real return over the long term. So how long is the long term? At the very least, 5 years. Ideally, more than 10 years. Don't take your retirement savings in cash when you change jobs. You need to keep it invested, otherwise this investment strategy won't work. Consider this graph of the JSE Aussie performance for January to October 2022. If you focus on the short-term return, for example September 2022, you will note a low return. In addition to that, the returns had been low for the most of that year. Then note the sharp recovery in October 2022. This shows how quickly things change in the short term. Now let's consider the long term. This graph, prepared by 91 Asset Management, shows 3 different scenarios. The pink line at the top shows what would have happened if you had remained invested over the 15 years up to 2021. The white line shows what would have happened if you had sold out at the bottom of the 2008 financial crisis and then got back into the market a year later and remained invested for the next 12 years. The yellow line at the bottom shows what would have happened if you had panicked and sold out at the bottom of the 2008 financial crisis into something safe and low risk like cash and remained there for 15 years. The differences are remarkable and shows the importance of remaining invested and riding out the volatility. If you panic and exit from the market when it is down, you will lock in the investment losses. If you stick to the strategy and remain invested, you should bear the fruit over the long term. The investment policy statement also refers to Regulation 28. Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act sets limits to where funds may invest retirement savings. It makes sure that members are invested in different assets or types of assets to reduce unnecessary investment risks. It applies to all retirement funds. Your trustees ensure that your retirement funds are compliant with Regulation 28 for your protection. In summary, your retirement savings strategy or plan needs to be a long-term plan. Therefore, your investment must grow at a higher rate than inflation. Remember my earlier point, the cost of living when you retire will be higher than the cost of living today. To get an investment return that is higher than inflation and gives you some extra growth, you need to take a certain amount of risk. To offset the volatility, the ups and downs in the market, you must stay invested for a long time. Investments can be complicated. Don't make uninformed decisions. Always speak to an investment advisor before making any investment changes on your retirement fund.